All right, so let's start off with contour. What I'm actually going to start off today with is what I call a blind contour. Now, this is really meant to be a standalone exercise. We're doing it to improve our eye-hand coordination, our hand-to-brain, or our hand-touch feel. We're just improving that. It's like an exercise you would do for maybe sports, to get better. And this is a great thing to practice on a daily or weekly basis. As a professional artist, I don't practice it a whole lot anymore, but there are times when I'll stop and just do it. Now, it's important to know that in a blind contour, the blind comes from you are not looking at your paper at all. So this can be both fun, interesting, and sometimes a little frustrating. So I think we should just focus on having fun with it. Your hand is on the paper. And we're going to begin. Now, I'm not going to look at my piece of paper. Okay? Now, there is a broken line contour and a continuous line contour. And we're going to cover both of them, but right now I'm going to do what's called a broken line contour, meaning I'm going to pick my pencil up and put it back down as I draw. So I got this nice, interesting paper here full of texture and energy and motion, and I'm going to give it a go here. So I'm starting with the stem, and I cannot see my piece of paper. And, I feel this sort of shape. I'm thinking of the texture. And realize, this drawing is going to come out looking maybe interesting, but it's not going to be very representative, perhaps, of the item. Meaning, we're doing it blind. And while I'm doing this, I'm thinking of my line quality, my gesture. I'm not looking at it. And I'm thinking, man, what does this thing feel like if I were to close my eyes? Where are the bumps? Where are the ridges? Where's the action? This is just a great exercise. Where does this thing undulate from? Where does it go to? There's times you might even run off the paper. Some artists would argue, well, you're going into the interior, so is this technically a contour? And I think that sort of gets into that gray area where you can have an exact definition of what a contour is. But for each artist, it might, change a little bit. Technically the contour is that outside line. I'm trying to focus on that. But yet the artist in me wants to get in there and try to attack the inside a little bit, so I'm trying to hold off. And I'm going to try to hint at the shadow just a touch. I know it's a contour, but I will hit the shadow. So someone could argue, well, this is sort of more of a blind gesture. That's fine. Blind contour. And this represents to me just a really good exercise. It's something to practice. We're thinking, what is this made of? Where do the forms and subforms come out of? Where do they undulate from? And now I look at my paper and I go, well, gee whiz, that doesn't actually look like the pepper that's up there, but I sort of get an essence of the general shape, the contour of it. And as you saw, I lifted and put my pencil back down. And that's something that you can really practice and just have fun with. So we just discussed that blind contour. I called it a broken line blind contour. So now let's look at a continuous line contour. Again, any tool is good to use. A pen, ballpoint pen, Conte, graphite, charcoal. You can use anything you want to. You can even paint blind contours if you want to. Okay, so this is where, same concept, same idea. We're really going to focus a little bit more just on the contour, I'll try to hold back and not get into the interior and keep it a true contour. But this is continuous line, meaning we're not going to pick up the pencil. All right? So, you know, I'm going to look at my paper. I'm going to pick a point. I'll start right here, and I'm going to take my time. In general, you have a little bit less, actually have a lot less line quality typically. And again, this is an exercise for the sake of an exercise. And it really pushes the brain, how you're thinking, pushes your hand and your eye-hand coordination. Take your time. And while I'm doing this, I'm thinking, well, I'm making this, you know, lump right now in this pepper, and I'm thinking, well, how big of a lump did I just make? I can't look at it to see. And then I think, I've got this next little lump here, and I think, well, how long or how big or how wide is that lump compared to the one I just put down? So my brain is trying to remember, you know, what my hand did. Now the artist in me wants to go to the interior a little bit right here. I'm going to do it. Again, I'm just trying to concentrate more on the contour. It's about that contour. I'm going to go to the interior a little bit right here. And I'm trying to think overlapping. What's overlapping? What cuts across another form? Come into the interior a little bit. Everyone has a little bit different definition. For some people, they'll say, don't go into the interior on a true contour. And that's great. But I do like to push the contour a little bit into the interior. Concentrate. Control your eye. Don't let yourself look at it. I'm going to try to define what is a little bit of the stem here, and I bet when I go back to look at my drawing, it's probably going to be way off. But that's all right. This is an exercise. And I'm back down on my stem. I'm hoping I'm kind of near where I began, but I don't know. I haven't looked at my paper yet. So let's take a look. Okay. Well, we certainly don't have something that looks just like our pepper, but we do have something that I feel like represents the possibility of the contour of it. At least I'm getting some sense of the spiraling effect or the movement or motion of it. And I wasn't too far off. This was the end of my stem. This was the beginning. So I feel like that I did fair. I mean, again, this is just a good exercise. It's building that eye coordination and that hand-brain connection. And I would encourage you to practice these often. So we've covered a couple different concepts of contour. Let's take another look at another way to think about it. So at this point, again, I'm going to work on contour. I would call this a semi-blind contour. All right, meaning I'm going to work on just the contour, that outside line. I will come in a little bit to the interior, and I'm going to try to balance or control how often I actually look at the paper. And I'm going to try to just sort of look at the paper about the time when I feel like there's sort of an undulation into the interior, or where maybe I'm showing an overlap or change in direction. And it's not even a bad idea at times to almost, shall we say, play an artistic game with yourself and say, I'm only going to allow myself 7 times to look at the paper, or maybe 3, or maybe 10. It's just an exercise to get that brain moving and work on that eye-hand coordination, and to make you maybe see things a little bit differently as an artist. All right, so here we go. Same pepper. Again, I'm going to start with the stem and come up. And this isn't going to be continuous. I'm going to have a broken contour that we partially look at from time to time. So I'm going to take a look. Now I'm not looking. I'm not looking. There's this nice undulation. Comes down. I want to go into the interior. I feel like this is a good point for me to sort of break and kind of take a look at it. And now I'm back off and not looking. All right, there's this nice break where I have an overlapping form. I feel like this is where I'm going to stop and choose to take a look at where I'm at, kind of come back in. So this is a broken line contour to me. Again, I'm not looking. I'm going to go into the interior. I'm going to stop and take a little look at where I'm at. I'm going to stop, I'll take a little look. I'm back not looking. All right, I'm going to stop and take a little look. There's a change where there's an overlapping form, so I'm going to go and take a little look at where I'm at, and now I'm not looking. I'm trying to be very limited how I approach that. Now, I got to get back to where I was, so I will stop. I'll take a little look and come back down and restart. Now I'm not looking. Again, it's an exercise. There's a break in form. I'll stop, take a look. Now I'm not looking. So it's this constant back and forth. Now stop and take a look. And I'm back to not looking at it. And I'm going to try to wrap it up without looking. I'm going to take one more look at the stem and try to make it meet up. All right, here we go. And I can suggest it's a contour, so technically there's typically not a shadow. But as the artist, I'm going to choose just for a little action. So again, not a very beautiful rendering of a pepper, but I feel like it was a good exercise in getting that brain and hand connection, and a good exercise in sort of overlapping and maneuvering through this, we could say, turning, this constant undulation of form within this pepper. Okay, So let's take a look at a contour drawing where we are looking at the object. And for some people, contour is specifically just the outline. But for me, I do like to bring it into the interior a little bit. That's just how I personally choose to define and work with a contour. So before I work with this contour, I will sketch it in lightly. I'm kind of moving between sketching right now, and I am thinking of some of the structural elements of this. I'm using a lot of different sort of techniques right now to just sort of sketch this in. And I'm just giving myself either, you could say, the freedom, possibly, or the confidence that I feel like I need to begin. Like I need a draft or an outline, so to speak. We could say some sort of framework to begin with. And some artists would choose to spend more time on this, and I think other artists or other instructors might even choose not to begin with this, like a wireframe. They might just jump right into it. So I'm not trying to do an exact copy of the pepper. I'm just trying to give you, the viewer, an essence of what this pepper's doing. Okay. So I feel as though I'm a little off here, so I'm going to sort of kind of regroup this area, sort of investigate, we could say. I feel like it's a little wider through here. And again, I'm drawing lightly. So, I'm not even going to bother to erase what I've put down, even if it's off, right? Even if it needs to be corrected. I'll just let it live in the background as I push on. Now the difference in a line drawing and a contour, depending on the instructor or the artist, could be somewhat similar in nature, in my opinion. But I'm going to try to concentrate more on just this contour. In a line drawing, I would really work a lot more on the interior. Right, so this is a contour drawing. We are looking at it. We're starting with a sketch. I'm using sketching techniques. In my mind, I'm using a little bit of structural drawing and a little bit of the blocking method just to get this general shape. These things are covered, throughout the course. All right, so I have a sense of confidence now. Like I have at least a little bit of something to go from. So I'll begin. And I go through my mind and I say, do I find this to be a soft edge or a hard edge? In my mind, I stop and think. Is this part of the pepper closer to me, or is this part of the pepper closer to me? I stop and think, where is it weighted? It's weighted on the bottom, so that's where I will draw a harder line. I'm thinking of these things sort of, all at once, like even before I get to them. I'm predetermining. I'm thinking already, what am I going to do here? What am I going to do there? What am I going to do here? While I'm working on this, it's a constant process. And again, this would look great with Conte, pen, charcoal, even marker. So I'm working on the contour of this leaf or stem within the pepper. And I'm going to soften up right through here because it's behind, it's back, and I want what's front, or what is up front, be a little bit sharper, a little bit harder of a line. Again, notice how my hand is on the paper, and I'll pivot. I'll use that part of my hand or even a knuckle of a finger to pivot off of. I'm trying to work between drawing with my shoulder, and again, you'll see me switch back and forth with how I'm holding my pencil to get a different line. Pulling off the page. And I'm constantly thinking, what is overlapping what? What direction is this form going in? And that's kind of why I chose this pepper, because there's a lot of undulating forms and subforms. By that I mean this pepper is an entire form. We could say it's an elongated, tubular, organic form. And on top of that are these little forms. I'm working on one right now. This is a little subform of this overall, we could say there's an overall sort of roundness or sort of oval shape within here. And on top of that are these sort of little tiny lumps or forms. And at times you'll see me move around, like I'll stop here and go back here and go back there. And I guess what I'm showing you as an artist is that my eye is constantly moving. And there are times when I will slow down and just concentrate on one area. And you as the student or you as the artist will develop your own working method, and you'll find that each object you draw, each item, each person, each situation will present itself with a different set of problems. And your job is to take the set of tools you have and try to figure out that problem within your own working method. And sometimes you'll see my hand do this. I'm just ghosting in, sort of double checking some things. I'm thinking, what if I were to draw here? Is this really where I want it? I'm looking for any little possible break. You know, this form overlaps this form. This form comes out from underneath. So I think of it in terms of this almost being sort of a tubular arrow. You know, this form is undulating up and around and over this form here. So we can say this form is almost pushing against this form, right? So this form, think of it, it comes out and up under, and this one almost like it even dives back down and around. So this one comes out and over and in this direction. And if I really think about it, this one, I'll redirect my arrow, actually pushes sort of, you know, and I'll do dot, 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 you know, dot, 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 kind of down, and I'll change it, all right? More like that. Careful study. I've altered the drawing. It really does this. This comes out from under and pushes over. So I'll sort of give ourselves a little bit of cross contour, and I want you to really understand that these forms are moving in unison. They are diving and ducking and rotating in and around and over one another. You know, that's very important to think about. And these are things that are going to aid you how can I show with, basically line, or, more or less, we are working on the contour. With that contour, I have limited tools I'm working with. I'm choosing not to shade. It's a contour. So how can I show that this comes over that? Well, you can show that with how you handle your line, the weight of your line, the thickness of your line. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I might. You keep hearing me harp on, line, movement, weight, thick, thin, and I'm going to say it over and over. It might get redundant, but my goal is for you to get it ingrained into your mind, into that skull, into that brain, and I want you to constantly be thinking of it when you're drawing, okay? Again, we're not just mindlessly copying. We are thinking. Where do I stop and choose to make a line like this and show a little more detail? Well, I do that because I want the viewer to have an opportunity to take note of this area, because for me, that's an important area. I've chosen that. What does that do? Now, I'm softening up here, and I'm also, finding moments in this drawing to have what we could say is a broken, or you could say an open line. That's a good thing. Don't feel like you have to connect everything. And that gives the eye a little bit of room to maneuver, move around. It gives it a place to kind of stop and relax. The eye doesn't always like the solid, continuous line. So now I'm going back over, and I want to sort of reestablish some of these things and see when and where I can push and pull them. Right? When I say push and pull them, I mean same thing. Over and over, you hear me say it. Can I make it darker? Why am I making it darker? What am I trying to accentuate? In this case, the fact that this is the bottom plane, or the plane, we could say, of the pepper, that is on the surface. So it has weight. It also has shadow on it. So I'm going to choose to put a fairly heavy line, but I'm also going to try to undulate the weight of that line to, again, go back to this concept of, does this form roll over, under? What is it doing? So I'm trying to hold off on getting into the interior too much. I'm trying to limit my line. There can be kind of a blurry definition sometimes between a line drawing and a contour. And I think that's good, that is blurry. Someone could argue that perhaps this is more of a line drawing. And that's fine. But I am really concentrating more so on the contour than the line. And even though it's a contour drawing, I'm going to do this shadow. And I'm going to do it almost in the fashion of a contour. I'm going to try to keep that where very lightly I'm going to just show the contour of the shadow. As it comes in. And then it disappears. Shadow goes up under, and then it sort of trickles out and reappears right about here. And it just kind of fizzles out, but I'll just sort of end it sort of like that. And even though it's a contour drawing, some people may say, well, shouldn't have a shadow in it, but for our purposes, I am going to put one in. Just a hint of it. There we go. And I'm going to sit back, I'm going to stop, I'm going to take a look at it, I'm going to get back from it. I'm going to say, where can I improve? Is there anything more I can do? I could sit here and work on this and work on this, but I'm about to the point for demonstration purposes that I'm about, comfortable with this. I'm about where I want it to be. A few more touches here and there. And I think that's a good point. Understand when to stop drawing on a drawing. That can be difficult sometimes for a student. Even a professional can struggle with it. When is it done? When is it good enough? When do I need to get off this drawing and move on? I want to show this end of the pepper that this undulates over that. So I'm going to accentuate that point, and I'm just going to let it sort of die out. And I think we have a good example of what I consider, from my definition, of a contour drawing using line from an object. So I hope you had fun with this. If you're taking this course, I would recommend that you practice every single one of these assignments repeatedly. I can't stress enough how it's your dedication to the craft, and a lot of times it boils down to the number of times you do something. If I'm an artist and I'm a beginner and I draw this 10 times, I'll be 10 times as good as the artist that draws it once. If I draw it 100 times, 1,000 times, I'll be 1,000 times better. In art, it really boils down, in my opinion, sometimes to repetition. As an artist, I've done these things, quite often, over and over. So take your time. Don't get frustrated. Realize that it typically won't come immediately. Different people have different levels of talent. For some, they may get it in 5 tries and really understand it. In others, it may take 5,000 times. Okay, so practice this. I can't stress that enough, how you will not get the result you want right out of the gate. You must be patient. It takes weeks, months, really years to push your skill level and to see it evolve. So be patient, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'll see you in the next lesson.